Hello, welcome to another episode of the Horror Vision Horror Podcast. My name is Sean,
And I'm Missy.
and we didn't have anything at the theater this week to talk about, so we are reviewing a movie that just hit VOD yesterday. A special thanks to the Horror Calendar Twitter account for alerting me to this because I had no idea we had a new movie coming from Alexandre Bustillo and Julien Maury. But the Soul Eater is now a $3.99 or $4.99 rental on Prime.
4.99
And
rental on
oh,
Prime.
okay. And it is fucking fantastic, I will say. So, Missy, and so at first when I mentioned this to you, and I feel like this is like a lot of people are not necessarily going to recognize these names, but to me, Bastillo and Moray, and I'm probably mispronouncing them, but they're kind of like a Moorhead and Benson, where like they've done a lot of movies together, and they're all fucking great. Also, in their body of work, we have Inside would be that's before I knew their names, but that movie, the original from 2007, fantastic fucking movie.
Hmm.
Fantastic movie. Among the Living, which was on Shudder forever. I guess I didn't realize this, or I'd forgotten that they did that Leatherface movie in 2017. Haven't seen it, not interested. But kudos to them for taking a whack at a major franchise. The Deep House, which I know you saw, an
Yeah.
underwater horror movie, haunted house movie, right?
And it's beautiful. It's
Yeah,
beautifully shot. It's such a cool movie. When you suggested watching this, I did not recognize their names. And you said, "Oh, you like them," and rattled off the movies. And like, I love Inside. I love The Deep House. Um, I don't remember Among the Living. I may have watched it, but I'm not sure.
it's good.
But
It's. I mean, I feel like I took it for granted because it was one of those that was on Shutter TV all the time. So I saw like in
okay,
patchwork pieces,
right.
like 5 years ago. But the other one they did that I really like is Livid. And apparently there's looking at their IMDb, I think there's actually maybe like an American version of that coming up because in their upcoming projects, that's one of them. So that I find that interesting.
Okay.
But that's a really, really solid flick.
I don't think I've seen that one. I'll have to look it up, check it
You
out.
would dig it. You would definitely dig it. Tori
Okay.
turned me on to it, and it's very good. It has
Okay.
a kind of a fairy tale element to it.
Oh, all right.
It kind of. Um, Also Candisha, which is a movie I think that's still on Shudder, and I've started a bunch of times and not finished. And I don't think it's any fault of the movie. It's just a movie that's been interrupted multiple times, and eventually I'll get back to it. But they're a team, and I really dig what they do. And I was super happy to see the Soul Eater pop, even though I was like, the Soul Eater? Like, I was like, man, I don't know. That kind of takes me back to like Hollywood Video or Blockbuster Video when you're in the horror aisle and there's like those movies that are like just, like, really?
Yeah,
Not the best title.
you had to try them because, 1 in 10, you'd find a gem.
That's true. But I feel like that may also be where like I didn't try a lot of those. I waited for other people to be like, no, that's a good one. So that's where it's like some of the stuff that you've
Okay.
turned me on to, that's how I missed it.
I was a video store kid and then I worked in a video store. So, I mean, I would try them and I could usually, I'd give them the 30-minute test and if I really just could not get into it, it was, so low budget and bad acting and whatnot that I just couldn't get into it. I'd nope out, but I'd always try them because that's how you'd find the weird shit.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a video store kid, but I also did not work in a video store, and I think that is a major fucking advantage. I think that is a major advantage. It's like the people that work at the comic shop, they're
Right,
because they get to read everything without
right. So
necessarily paying for it.
So you'll watch anything, just like we see pretty much anything horror related that hits the theaters because we have the movie passes. So
Yeah,
why
the
not?
movie
We'll try
passes
it.
is that kind of evens the score in this day and age. We're like, yeah, of course I'll go check that out because, why not? Which
Right. And
sidebar, Werewolves is still in the fucking theater by me.
I know I was so happy to see that.
And in
So
fact,
if you're,
I think it's on still on like five screens or five. It has like five times. You know what I mean?
I was
Like,
going to say it was not on five screens,
no, it's not.
but it had a full array of showings. So yeah, I was happy to see that too. We'll see if it's still there tomorrow after the flip. But
Oh, see now there's okay. No, there's two showings. But anyway, if you haven't heard our Werewolves review, you don't necessarily need to listen to it. Just go fucking watch the movie while it's in the theater because you get another week and it's worth it. Anyway,
right.
but we're not here to talk about werewolves. We're here to talk about the Soul Eater, and so we're spoiler free. I'm just gonna say, what did I text you last night after I watched it? When you were gonna start it, I was like, all I'm gonna say is this movie is not what you think it's going to be at fucking all.
Right. Yeah, you did send me that. And I'm glad you did because you know me and you know what I'd respond to. So I was able to go into it really open minded and just buy the ticket and take the ride without going, because otherwise, having read the synopsis, I would have had preconceived notions. I know I would have.
Yes, and in fact, so I was reading an interview with them before Bustillo and Maury before we started rolling, and so one of the things they said is like a producer that they worked with on, I think it was Candicia, that they remained friends with, contacted them and said, "Hey, I love this book and I bought the fucking rights to it. Will you read the book and and I have people that wrote the script." So usually these guys write their movies too, and I guess that's not the case with this one. So that's a
Okay.
departure, but also they said it's a departure that they did this as a thriller. And so they were trying to think outside of the horror genre, and they're basically saying like that's our genre, so we lean into it, but we were trying to kind of like check ourselves and like, okay, think thriller. And this is really interesting. I never thought of this before. They said that the thing with a thriller is you have to give a lot of information to the audience without being boring.
Huh.
And
I never thought
that's
about that.
like if you stop and think about it, that's a really astute observation, I feel like. And I feel like watching this movie, I can tell that that was in their head
Mm-hmm.
because it's not boring at
It's not
all.
boring. It grabbed me immediately. The but they lean heavy into the character development. So you're focusing on your two lead characters, and I'm not familiar with the actors, but they both had good chemistry and did a very good job. I was
Yeah.
invested in their story and their respective quests. um, so I was invested in the characters, and it also I feel like thrillers lean into this more. Not that horror doesn't. They use their ambience really well,
Yes.
so it leans into this moody, kind of dreary scenescape. I'm not even entirely sure where they actually are, but they use their setting very, very well, and it's gorgeous.
That was so hard to figure out where they were because early on, there's a stop sign, right, that says stop. And also, I believe they're driving on the side of the road we do. So I'm like, wait a minute, are they
Right.
in?
That's why I was confused because it's French, but I mean, they were driving on the right side of the road.
And they never overtly state because I'm pretty sure all the locations they mention are made up. I'm not 100% positive,
Okay.
but I was trying to Google them. Spelling be damned. Maybe I fucked something up, but I think they were made up.
Okay.
Um, but there is a point where somebody says like, well, this isn't Paris or I forget what the other city they mentioned, Marseille. And I'm like, oh, so
Oh,
okay, so it's
okay.
France. It's France. If
So it
they're
is
saying that, it's
France.
France. but I was like, is this like Quebec?
Yeah, it just looks like the country.
Yeah.
And like it's very specifically not a specific place. Like they're,
Yes.
like those places where they'll film movies so that it just looks like the Midwest,
Yes.
but you
Yeah.
don't
Well,
actually.
yeah.
It's the same kind of like I don't want to say generic, but it's like they were trying to go for that we're everywhere and nowhere generic kind of setting.
Yes. Absolutely. I think you're exactly right. And like early on, there's like a scene. Well, Paul Hammy's character gets off a bus, but the bus that he's on, like I had major Argento phenomenon vibes when that bus pulls down that road because I was like, oh my God, it looks like the beginning of Phenomenon with the bus. Um, but then there was like a stop sign shortly after that, and I was like, wait,
Okay.
what? What? But I believe it is France.
Okay.
But either way, I mean, it looks like it could be the Pacific Northwest, and in fact,
Right.
Amazon did a funky thing where I started watching it, and it took me like 5 minutes, but I was like, is this dubbed? And then I looked and it had just automatically given me the dubbed version, which I'm like, no, I'll read the subtitles. I want to hear the actual fucking voices and the language. And I actually have really come to
Oh,
appreciate the
okay.
French language. But it was weird because I was like, where it added to the I don't know where I am in the world right now feeling.
Okay. See, at first I didn't realize it was a French film, and as I'm watching it, like the way I watched the dub version. I didn't realize there was an option. That's just what came on. Um, and about, I don't know, a third in, I kind of realized, oh, this is a French movie. That's why it like the way they're talking just feels kind of,
Yeah,
that
stilted.
foreign off. Yeah, where it just feels off.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was fine. I was invested. It didn't bother me. But I became aware of it at some point for a minute.
It reminded me a little bit of this Netflix show Dark. That's a German show, and it's a fucking great show. But that show, I couldn't. That was a show where I had trouble getting into it because Netflix, the default for North America is to give you the dub version, and I just couldn't fucking deal with it at first. And I switched it to subtitles, and then I had trouble. It was the only time where I'm like, I actually prefer the dub because there was just something about the characters. And it's a great show, and all the performances are fantastic. But I was really having a hard time following. And when you see the whole show, you understand why. But so I ended up watching the dub, but I really had to force myself to get used to it because it can throw so much off. So it reminded me a little bit of that, just as like the initial, like, oh wait, no, I okay, this is dubbed.
Okay. Yeah, it didn't bother me. Um, in fact, it almost added to the eerie ambience in a way because they're in this generic nowhere anywhere place where we're not sure where they're at, and then
Yeah,
they're talking in this kind of dialogue that felt the same way. It makes them feel very isolated and
yeah,
lost in their, you know, like very isolated from the rest of the world. So we are in their world
yeah.
where they're telling you this story. You keep hearing this eerie voiceover of somebody reading a story about the soul eater, this folklore that surrounds where they're from.
Which sounded it reminded me a lot of like the Wendigo, and I actually in that interview they did reference the Wendigo as kind of being like a companion to the Soul Eater thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not entirely sure if the Soul Eater was made up for the movie or if that is actually some kind of regional folklore. But man, it's just the movie is just not what you think it's going to be, and especially like I don't love the title. I especially don't love the title with the images, the thumbnail images. Like it just makes you think it's going to be something, and
It
it's
isn't.
totally not that. It's actually Like, I would show this movie to anybody. I think it transcends the genre. And so in other words, I think that they did a really good job doing a thriller for the first time. Like, I
Hmm.
really think they knocked it out of the park. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's a very solid mystery with all the pieces. Like they don't cheat.
No.
They play it. They play it well. It's well written. If you're fans of uh like something like True Detective, you could
Yeah.
definitely get into something like that.
Twin Peaks. I feel like there's Twin Peaks in here too. It's like weird little fucking town of like not many people. It's not progressed this with technology and whatnot the same way the rest of the world has. Kind of left behind. There's a couple like really weird left turns in here. There's one that involves a guy
Hmm.
on a motorcycle where I was like, what?
Hmm.
And then it like comes around and you're like, oh, wow. And there's
Yeah.
another moment near the end. I think you'll know what I mean when I say the calls are coming from inside the house a moment where I was like,
Hmm.
wait a minute, what
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
fuck is happening right now? Like it totally accelerated the movie for me at
Hmm.
that moment. Like, oh, wow.
Yeah. I That was really well played too.
Yeah, very. And it makes the ending very, very effective. Like the last thing
Hmm.
you see, which then actually makes the beginning more meaningful. And I really like the opening shot of the detective running like it's just his feet and you're watching his feet as he's jogging and it's that thing where like you can repeat a word over and over again until it starts to not be that word anymore. It starts to like run together and it's almost like that
Hmm.
from watching his feet. It was like almost surreal, but oh man, really good performances.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Surreal. The whole movie kind of feels that way.
Yeah.
It's got this very surreal, we are in our own world vibe.
Yeah.
It I used to listen to a podcast called Baraska that was like a horror thriller story podcast. It was like a full cast thing that you can listen to on Spotify. And it was the same kind of thing, this small isolated middle of nowhere town and a weird story and it goes from there. So this gave me those kind of vibes too. It kept me guessing. It gives you a couple option, a couple directions it can go in, and even if you think there were a couple things I figured out, but then there'd still be a left turn that where it's like, oh, I didn't see that coming.
Right.
I got this piece, but I didn't see that coming. So, if I figure the whole thing out, it usually takes away from it for me.
Yeah.
So I'm always happy when you get those curves.
Yeah, 100%. And very, very good comparison to Nebraska. Because there's other comparisons I won't actually say out loud, but like Baraska was one of the man, that's probably the best fiction podcast other than the hearing Bret Easton Ellis read the shards on his podcast. But Baraska was fucking amazing that first season. And
Hmm.
this is similar in that like it goes places that are so fucking dark, but somehow didn't like send me into a tailspin about it.
Okay. Yeah, it conjured that for me right away. As soon as because it opens with
Yeah.
this movie, The Soul Eater, opens with a voiceover of somebody reading you this story or telling you this story about the Soul Eater, and this Beresca podcast has a rhyme that
Oh
kind of
yeah.
does the same thing. I don't remember exactly how it goes, but there for anybody who's interested in it, it's probably on any of the big
Yeah, it's
podcast
on all the major streamers for
platforms.
podcasts.
Yeah, but I know it's on Spotify because that's how I listen to it.
It was written by
Rebecca Klingel.
who works with Flanagan, Hill House, Blind Manor, Usher, like all of them.
Hmm.
Yeah, Brass is definitely great. And I can't say it enough. I feel like the title, I know why they named the movie The Soul Eater. I get it.
I do too. I agree with you that I don't love the title, but I know exactly why they did it. And
Yeah.
being that I had such a good experience and was able to completely give into their story and take the ride, like I get why they did it.
Yeah.
I feel like there's still a better title out there, but it it worked. The movie is very effective. It I feel like they did quite a bit with a little. It's I hadn't heard anything about it. It's pretty independent, pretty low budget. It's not full of big effects or anything like that, but it's a very well written, solid film, and I enjoyed it a whole lot. And I'm glad you brought
Yes.
it to my attention because I didn't know anything about it.
It's written by Annalise Betrell and Ludovic Lefebvre, based on a novel by Alexis Lapsker. I was hoping for like a shooting locations thing on IMDb, but I don't see it. But
Mm-hmm.
it is that may be on purpose. It is gorgeous, and it's one of those things they do a lot with a little. And I feel like the people that do that the best recognize that, like, let's just get a very good location, and they
Mm-hmm.
make very good use of the location. And also, I feel like cinematographer Simon Roca, like he just really knows how to capture
Mm-hmm.
this kind of ethereal element of this
Yeah,
landscape. It looks like the Pacific Northwest. It's just heavily wooded and it's fucking
and
gorgeous.
foggy.
Foggy. Yeah, and so there's that definite Twin Peaks element there too. And like,
Mm-hmm.
man, it's just fucking gorgeous. And there's just so much production
It
value
is.
in just the way his camera kind of roams those hills and gives you that environment. Oh God, man, oh, so good.
Yeah, I loved the way it was shot. I was in right away just just with that, and then then we meet the characters and they're well fleshed out too.
Yeah,
But
and
I
very
could have just
quickly.
watched. Oh yeah, very quickly. It's weird because it's like you're watching it and it seems like it's got that slow burn vibe, but it never felt slow.
I kept wondering if I should text you like, slow burn, but same. I'm like, I don't feel like it's a slow burn. Maybe some people will, but it just really enveloped me. And there's not a lot of it is and it isn't a horror movie. It's a thriller first. There's definite horror elements for sure.
Hmm.
And there's not a lot of gore, but there's some. Um, oh, there's a scene like the first the first murder tableau that you get when you actually see how it happened. It's completely, oh man, it's just
Oh
very
yeah,
effective. Very effective.
very.
Yeah.
And that went in a direction I did not see coming.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it was just a very pleasant, unexpected surprise.
Agreed.
It's a pretty well written, deep film that I didn't know anything about, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I would encourage anybody to check it out. It's 4.99 on Prime, and it's absolutely worth your time.
Agreed. Yeah. That's the Soul Eater. And this is the Horror Vision. And I'm Sean.
And I'm Missy.
is in the woods. A strange new drug that turns art into murder. A can't beat a deal on a new house with a horrifying past. A video game that might usher in the apocalypse. From the demented mind of Sean C. Baker, author of A Collection of Desires, Shadow Play, and Murder Virus, comes Volume 4, collecting Baker's no sleep work along with several never-before published short stories. This 99-cent volume also includes the opening chapter of the author's forthcoming teenage giallo novel, Black Gloves and Broken Hearts, due out later this year.